Honorable Minister, Mr. Anil Madhav Dave, the Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Mr. Sanjeev Puri, the Chief Operating Officer of ITC, Mr. Shobna Kamineni, the President-Designate of CII, Ms. Seema Arora, the Executive Director of CII-ITC. It's a great pleasure and honor to be in the midst of all of you at this opening plenary on Sustainable Development Goals for Sustaining Businesses. And I'm particularly delighted that this is being inaugurated by the Honorable Minister, someone who has done a great amount of work in the field of environment, at the grassroots level, in the field. And he's been a source of inspiration for many of us. His work in the field of water has been particularly spectacular, and I think his contribution to the field of sustainability at grassroots level has been immense. So, ladies and gentlemen, India is growing at rates of 7.5% per annum. Our challenge, as the Honorable Prime Minister has repeatedly said, is to grow at 9 to 10% per annum, year after year, for 3 decades or more, to be able to lift a very young population above the poverty line. If you are to lift people above poverty line, if you have to grow for 3 decades, as many countries of the world post-World War II have done, Japan did it, Korea did it, China has done it in recent times. There are several challenges which India will have to meet, one of which will be the challenge of urbanization. India in the next 3 decades will see 350 million people moving into the process of urbanization. If you go by the McKinsey study, by 2050, India will see 700 million additional people moving into the process of urbanization. That means that as we speak here, every minute there are 30 Indians moving from rural areas to urban areas. And 700 million people getting into the process of urbanization by 2050 means that India's challenge is to create 2.5 Americas. 2.5 Americas by 2050. That is the challenge. Now, when America and Europe urbanized, land, gas, water were all cheaply available. And because they were cheaply available, America could create cities where you could live in New Jersey, travel to New York, you could guzzle gas. They could create cities like Atlanta, where 98.2% of the people travel by car. They travel by car. Nobody travels by public transport. So actually, it's a city for cars and not for people. And actually, American car companies, when they were growing, they bought over the railway companies and destroyed them, so that cars could sell. So America became a nation of creating more and more highways, more and more roads, more and more car production, and they created some of the most polluting cities in the world. Now, when India has started growing, the process of urbanization has ended across America, it's ended across Europe, it's nearing its completion in China. India's process has just begun. And India's process has just begun, and in the next 4 to 5 decades, we will do more urbanization than what we've done in the last 500 years. So the challenge is that, if India grows exactly the way which America grew, then we will require 4 planet Earths to find resources for India to grow at those rates. But we have only 1 planet Earth. And therefore, the challenge for India is that how do we do innovative and sustainable urbanization? So innovative and sustainable urbanization, to my mind, is the key. And if India is able to find that approach, the right approach of innovative and sustainable urbanization, which is what we are searching for, then India will hold the model of future urbanization and future growth and future development for the rest of the world. And therefore, it is very important that India must bring in innovation in a vast range of areas and bring in sustainability in its growth process. That is the key. Innovative and sustainable process of growth is the key. Now, what does India have to do? And one of the key challenges is that as we start doing housing for all, as we start doing smart cities, as we do Make in India, is that we adopt the principles of innovativeness and sustainability as the Prime Minister has driven it through his zero effect, zero defect in policy in the Make in India initiative, as we are trying to do in smart cities. Now, smart cities is not just about technologies as what many technology companies are talking about embedding technology. It's not about just embedding technology, as many countries are doing. It's about seeing that you are able to create compact, dense cities where livability improves. And livability cannot improve without better management of public transport, without embedding your cities with public transport. Because in our cities, 70 to 80% of the people must travel by public transportation and not by cars. India can't afford the model of every family owning 4 to 5 cars as America has. If you start doing this, you will create some of the most polluting cities of the world. And therefore, how do you manage your cities with public transportation? How do you manage your water, recycle your water? And that will be one of India's biggest challenge. And how do you recycle your waste will be one of the biggest challenges. And therefore, the biggest challenges, our process of urbanization, is that not only we create new cities which are innovative and sustainable, but if we are not able to bring that innovative and sustainability, our existing cities, each one of them will become slums. And they are becoming slums, and therefore it's very important that we bring in a huge amount of sustainability and innovation to them. So, to my mind, embedding your cities with recycling of water, waste, and public transportation is the key. The second key challenge to my mind is the challenge of water, which will become our biggest challenge. And this is very important to understand, because in 1950s, we were taking out just about 20% of the water was groundwater for irrigation purposes. Today we are taking out about 64% of our irrigation water as groundwater. In several parts of India's northwest, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, these are states which are becoming deserts because you are taking out water, you are taking out poisonous water. You've gone so deep below that we are leaving nothing for future generations. You have gone so deep below that you are actually digging out absolute poison from below. You've cracked the surfaces right below, and we are not recharging our aquifers. And therefore, in a country, as Sanjeev said, which has 17% population but only 4% of the freshwater resources, we are consuming 3 times more water for our agriculture purposes than what United States of America, than what Brazil and what China does. And therefore, lesser water consumption in irrigation will actually enhance your productivity. And lesser water means that you should also move towards crops which are non-water consuming. And to my mind, it's important that the significance of water and the lessons of many of these practices of water come from countries which are water scarce. They come from Singapore, whose treaty was to end in 2011 with Malaysia, and another treaty in 2061, today recycles all its water, whether it's rainwater, whether it's drainage water, everything is recycled. Almost 10% of the water, recycled water, is treated and used for human consumption, which is new water today. The President and the Prime Minister drink that treated water for human consumption. And therefore, not only do we have to enhance and improve the consumption of water for our irrigation purposes, but bring in very strong regulations. I am a believer that we must leave water for future generations and recharge our aquifers and bring in strong regulations in groundwater management. Too much of water is being consumed because we are not charging people for electricity. And because you are not charging for electricity, people are not realizing that the water is becoming free. You are going deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper, and leaving nothing for future generations at all. And therefore, I think it's important that there are huge lessons, and there are huge lessons to be learned in water management from several states of India. Madhya Pradesh has done an exceedingly outstanding job in terms of ensuring that water reaches the last consumer first, in command area programs which they've done, before water reaches the first consumer. And therefore water becomes then a responsibility for everyone. But these movements can't, you can't have smart cities of the future with just transportation and water till we do not have smart people. Sustainability is not about technology. Sustainability is about people. Until India doesn't have smart people, you'll never have smart cities. And that, therefore, the ethos of sustainability, the ethos of making cities which are livable, of doing irrigation, which is for future generations, all must become a part of our thinking process. Each one of us must become a part of its thinking process. That how do we save everything for future? And therefore, I personally feel that this is a very, very critical moment of our time, of our history. We are embarking upon a process of growth. We are embarking on a process of change. And change does not happen till people don't take responsibility. And leadership must emerge from the people, all of us. And therefore, as we grow, as we expand, as we progress, I think the responsibility must rest with each one of us to create a sustainable India for the future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.